The star charts called it a dead zone. There was no trade happening in the Varen Reach anymore. No ships docked. No signals came out of it. The old station that used to sit at its edge had gone cold 8 years ago. Power cut, airlock sealed, left to drift like a rusted tooth in the dark. But something still lived on its outer hull. The patrol vessel Saren's Hope dropped out of warp at the edge of the Reach for a routine position check. It was a small ship, 3 crew, 1 medic, 1 aging navigation system that complained every time it was asked to do anything above standard speed. Nothing about this stop was meant to be interesting. Aura, the navigator, ran her scanner across the station out of habit. She had passed this spot 11 times in the last 4 years. She already knew what she would find. Cold metal, no power, no signal, and 1 small living creature on the upper hull, curled in the same spot she always was. She's still there, Aura said. Not surprised, not moved, just noting it the way you note a landmark. Beld, the commander, did not look up from his instrument panel. Log it and move on. Rin, the ship's medic, was sitting at the back of the cabin eating a nutrition pack and not paying attention to anything in particular. Then he heard what Aura said. "What's still there?" he asked. Aura pulled the scanner image to the shared screen without much thought. It showed the dark, battered hull of the station, and there, in the upper left section near what used to be the docking ring, was a small shape. Compact, winged, faintly gold even under the scanner's flat rendering. Rin leaned forward. "That's a dragon," he said. "Solhari," Aura corrected. "The correct term is Solhari. And yes, she has been there for approximately 19 years, by the station's last recorded logs." Rin looked at the image for a long moment. 19 years. Outside, on the hull. They are more resilient than they look. Low metabolic needs in cold conditions. Not comfortable, I imagine, but survivable. Rin set down his food. "Why is she there?" Aura glanced back at him briefly. "She is waiting." "For what?" "For a human," Aura said. "A specific one. A cargo runner who passed through this station 19 years ago. He told her he would come back." Rin was quiet for a moment. "Did he?" Aura turned back to her console. "No." Beld spoke without looking up. "People say things. Doesn't mean anything. Log the sighting, Aura. We have a schedule." Rin did not move. He was looking at the shape on the screen. That small golden curl on a dead station's hull, alone in the cold between stars. He had been given a brief when he joined this crew 6 weeks ago. A standing brief that all personnel on Reach-adjacent routes were supposed to receive. He had read it. He had not known what to do with it at the time, so he had done nothing. He thought about it now. He pulled it up on his personal screen. The file was not long. It had been filed by the Human Transit Authority, originally flagged from a much older report written by a freighter pilot named Ren in year 9 of the Vigil. It described a Solhari female waiting at the Varen station for a human named Dale. It described Dale's failed attempts to return. It described what Dale had asked for before he died. At the bottom, in plain text, was the request. It said, "If any human vessel passes through the Varen Reach, please make contact with the Solhari and inform her of what happened. She has been waiting long enough to deserve the truth." Rin read it twice. Then he looked at the image of Sarah again, because he now knew her name from the file, and calling her the dragon felt wrong. She was still curled in her spot. The scanner could not read her expression. It could only confirm she was alive, that her body temperature was low but stable, that she had not moved in the time they had been watching. 19 years. He tried to imagine it. Sitting outside, in the vacuum, with no warmth and no company, because someone had looked at you once and said the words "I'll be back," and you had believed them with your whole self. He could not fully imagine it, but something in him understood the shape of it. "I want to go out to her," he said. Belt finally looked up. "Excuse me. Eva, I want to cross to the station hull and talk to her." Rin kept his voice flat and even. "We have the equipment. It would take less than 2 hours. And I have a brief that technically asks any human in this region to do exactly that." Belt stared at him. "That brief is advisory, not mandatory." "I know." "We have a schedule, Rin." "I know that too." Silence. Aura said nothing. She had stopped pretending to focus on her console. Beld looked at Rin for a long time. He was not a soft man. He had run patrol routes for 11 years, and he did not make decisions based on feelings. He looked back at his panel. He looked at the station on the shared screen. He looked at the small golden shape on the hull. He did not say yes. But he did not say no either. He said, "Don't take more than 2 hours." Rin was already getting up. 19 years before Rin suited up for his EVA, a man named Dale landed a battered freighter at the Varen station and immediately spilled a cup of something hot on his own boots. He was not a dramatic person. He was not a soldier or an explorer or a diplomat. He ran cargo, small loads, legal ones, across the mid-sector routes, and he was reasonably good at it. His ship was called the Heron's Tooth, which sounded impressive and was not. It had a dent on the starboard panel that he had been meaning to fix for 3 years. The interior smelled faintly of machine oil and the dried fruit he kept in a bag near the pilot's seat. He had stopped at Varen to refuel and file a transit form. He expected to be there for 4 hours. He stayed for 6 days. It started because of a noise. While he was walking through the station's lower docking corridor, he heard a sound. A small, sharp clicking, like something metal being tapped against something else metal repeatedly, and without success. He followed it. Behind a maintenance alcove near the secondary docking arm, he found a very small creature trying to open a navigation panel with tools that were clearly meant for hands 3 times its size. The creature was golden. It had wings tucked tight against its back. It was clearly frustrated but working in silence, which Dale found oddly dignified. He stood there for a moment. Then he said, "Do you want help?" The creature turned and looked at him with bright copper-colored eyes. It said nothing for a long few seconds, measuring him with the kind of look that made you feel your character was being assessed. Then it said, "You are human." "Yes," Dale said. "I have not met a human before," it said. "You are smaller than I expected." Dale looked at the creature, which was roughly the size of a large cat. "So are you," he said. Something shifted in those copper eyes. Not offense. Closer to approval. It said, "My name is Sarah. This panel controls the navigation relay for our ship. My elder Vaughn is ill, and I cannot reach the correct wire junction. The tools we have are wrong." "I have tools," Dale said. "And hands." He crouched down. Together, Dale reaching into the panel where Sarah directed him, and Sarah reading the relay map with precision that made him feel slightly useless. They fixed the junction in about 2 hours. Then they sat in the alcove and talked for another 4, because neither of them had anywhere urgent to be, and the conversation did not seem to want to end. Sarah told him about the Solhari. She told him about the remembrance, the cultural law at the center of their lives. She explained it simply. A Solhari never makes a casual promise. When they say they will do something, they mean it with everything they are, and they are bound to it until it is fulfilled. To break a remembrance was not just dishonest. It was to become something less than yourself. Dale listened to all of this carefully. He asked a few questions. He did not laugh or call it strange. He told her about Earth, about the cargo routes, about his family, a sister on a settlement station 3 sectors over, parents who had been farmers before farming on Earth became mostly automated and they retrained as something else. He said he had ended up in space mostly because he was not very good at staying still. Sarah considered this. She said, "You seem comfortable with being alone." He thought about it honestly. "I'm used to it," he said. "That's not quite the same thing." That night, Vaughn died. Quietly, in their ship, with Sarah beside him. In the morning she told Dale, and her voice did not waver, but she sat very still afterward for a long time. She had no way home. Vaughn had been the navigator. The nearest Solhari settlement was weeks away. Dale looked at the Heron's Tooth. He looked at Sarah. He said, "I'll take you." It was a detour of nearly a month. He rearranged his delivery schedule and paid the fine for the late drop-off and did not complain about it once. During that month they fell into an easy routine. Sarah sat near the pilot's seat and read from her elder's data files while Dale flew. They ate at different times but talked for hours. He taught her 3 card games. She taught him to read the directional markings Solhari used in star charts. Tiny, precise notations that turned out to be more efficient than the compact standard. When they finally reached the settlement and it was time for him to leave, she walked with him back to the Heron's Tooth. She asked, quietly, if he would ever come back this way. He stopped walking. He turned and looked at her small gold face and those copper eyes that were looking at him with the same careful measuring look she had given him in that maintenance alcove, when she was deciding if he was worth trusting. He knew, by then, what the remembrance meant. He knew the weight of those words for her people. He said, I'll be back. Give me time. I'll be back. He said it the way she had described. Not casually. Not as a hope. As a thing that was already decided. She held his gaze for a moment. Then she stepped back. She watched the heron's tooth lift off and disappear into the warplane. She did not feel afraid. A remembrance had been made. She was certain of it. She began to wait. The first year, Sarah waited inside the station. She took a small room near the docking corridor where she and Dale had fixed the panel together. She kept Vaughn's data files and organized them carefully because it felt like the right thing to do with the time. She filed the necessary forms to extend the docking claim Vaughn had registered before he died. The station administrator, a tired Dravosi male who handled 20 stations and cared about none of them, processed the form without reading it. Sarah had a place to stay. She had a reason to be there. She settled in. She expected to wait perhaps 2 years. Maybe 3. Dale had said give me time, not give me a decade. She was patient by nature. The Solhari learned patience the way other species learned to swim. Early, by necessity, until it became invisible. By year 2 the station had grown quieter. 2 of the cargo companies that used it regularly had switched to a different route through the Thalvin corridor. There were fewer ships, fewer people, fewer conversations to have in the corridors. A Dravosi merchant named Aussie passed through and found Sarah reading in her room. He laughed when she told him why she was there. He said humans didn't follow through on things. He said their kind were known for enthusiasm that went cold fast, like badly insulated heating units. Sarah said nothing. She thought about Dale sitting in that alcove with tools he didn't have to use, staying 4 hours past when the job was done because the conversation was worth staying for. She decided Aussie was not a good measure of anything. By year 4 the politics had started shifting. The Compact and the Dravosi Empire were arguing about transit rights in the outer sectors. The Varen Reach sat between 2 contested lanes. Ships were being rerouted. Inspectors started appearing at stations along the reach to audit long-term occupancies. One of them came to Sarah's room with a tablet and a flat expression and told her she needed to leave. Unauthorized dwelling on a scheduled-for-review orbital facility. She asked him to look at the filing Vaughn had made. He said it had expired. Sarah asked him to look at the date it was filed and the length of the claim. She had already done the calculation. The claim was still valid for another 3 years. He looked. He left. By year 6 the corridor outside her room was empty most days. The station officially lost its commercial designation. The lights in the common areas were set to minimal. The heating in the outer ring cut out in year 7 and was never repaired. Sarah moved to the inner hub. By year 8, she was the only occupant. She went outside for the first time in year 9, not because she wanted to, but because the inner hub's power finally failed completely and she needed to find a way to monitor ships entering the area. She found a spot on the outer hull where the old docking ring met the station's main body. There was a shallow depression in the metal, shaped by years of thermal cycling. She tried it. It fit her shape well. She could see everything from there. Any ship that entered the reach, she would see it. A human freighter came through that same year. Small, civilian, not military. Sarah flagged it using the emergency beacon she had salvaged from the inner hub. The ship changed course toward her. The pilot, a weathered human woman named Wren, suited up and came to the hull to talk to her. Sarah asked if she knew a man named Dale. Wren said she didn't, but she knew cargo runners worked through a dozen different networks, and there was no way to know them all. She offered Sarah passage to somewhere warmer. Sarah said no. Wren looked at her for a long moment. She didn't argue. She went back to her ship and flew away. A few weeks later, a short notice appeared in the Human Transit Authority's regional bulletin. Sarah didn't know about it then. She only learned about it much later. By year 12, the war had ended. The Reach was now officially a dead corridor. No commercial value, no military value, formally struck from the active transit registry. Ships only passed through by accident or on patrol routes. The Solhari settlement sent a ship in year 14. 3 Solhari, 2 elders, and a younger male, docked with her emergency beacon signal and found her on the hull. They told her she was wasting her life. They said Dale was likely dead, or had forgotten, or had never meant what he said the way she believed he meant it. They said the remembrance had a provision for exactly this. If the one who made the promise was gone beyond reasonable search, the waiting party could declare it fulfilled in spirit and return home without shame. She listened to all of it. She thanked them for coming. She told them, very calmly, that she was not ready to invoke that provision. She said she was not in despair. She said she was not suffering in the way they feared. She had purpose. The remembrance held her the way a rope holds a ship, not a trap, but a tether, something to be attached to. They stayed for 2 days. They argued with her. They brought her food and left a supply pack and told her she was being too stubborn. She said she preferred the word faithful. They left. The hull of the station, where she had rested for years, had developed a smooth, shallow patch in the shape of her body. The metal had worn differently where she lay. The texture changed, faintly golden from long contact. She had become, in some quiet way, part of the station. She kept watching the lane. Rin had been reading for 20 minutes before he said anything. He was sitting at the back of the cabin with his personal screen, and Aura had stopped pretending not to watch him. Belt had gone quiet too. The Saren's Hope held its position at the edge of the reach while outside, on the dead station's hull, a small gold shape remained still. Finally Rin looked up. He said, "I want to tell you what happened to him." Aura turned fully in her seat. Belt said nothing, which meant he was listening. Rin set the screen on the table between them so they could both see if they wanted to. He didn't summarize it quickly. He told it properly, the way it was written in the files, because it felt wrong to make it small. After leaving Sarah, Dale had gone back to his cargo route. He had a plan to return within 2 years, a standard run through the Thalvin corridor that would bring him back through the Reach. He had already filed the route. He had thought about it as a settled thing. Then the compact Dravosi negotiations collapsed in year 2, and the Varen corridor was closed to civilian transit. He filed for a humanitarian exemption. It was denied. He filed again with more documentation. Denied again. He joined a group of human traders petitioning the Compact Council about the corridor closure. The petition sat in a committee for 3 years. He switched his main route to the outer sectors to keep earning while he waited for the political situation to improve. In year 5, he had enough saved to buy a faster ship, something that could potentially run the transit closure without being caught. He tried once. He was intercepted and fined significantly. He tried a second time 8 months later. His ship was impounded, and he spent 6 weeks in a compact holding station before a human advocacy group got him released. He was not reckless. He was not foolish. He simply had no other options, and he kept trying the ones available to him. In year 7, he filed a formal petition with the Compact Cultural Affairs Division, citing the Solhari Remembrance as a recognized cultural obligation. He had done research. He had the correct documentation. He submitted it with a full explanation of what had happened at the Varen station and what he believed he owed. The Compact Cultural Affairs Division acknowledged receipt and filed it under non-urgent cross-species cultural matters. It stayed there. In year 12, when the war ended and the Reach reopened, Dale had a new problem. The years of stress and bad nutrition and sleeping in impounded ships had caught up with him. He went in for a routine medical check and came out with a diagnosis he had not expected, a degenerative neurological condition. Manageable for a time. Eventually not. He accelerated everything. More petitions. Direct contact with the Compact Transit Authority. Letters to human advocacy organizations. He wrote to the Solhari settlement himself, asking if they could tell him whether Sarah was still there. They wrote back that she was, that she had refused to leave, that she was well, by their estimation, though they had concerns about long-term exposure. He wrote to Ren, the cargo pilot whose name appeared in the Transit Authority Bulletin from year 9. She responded quickly. She gave him every contact she had. In year 15, the Human Transit Authority finally cross-referenced Ren's old bulletin with Dale's pile of petitions. A records archivist named Pole, who worked night shifts and had apparently read every pending cross-species cultural filing in the backlog out of boredom, flagged the connection and sent it up the chain. By the time the authority contacted Dale, he was in the early stages of significant neurological decline. His hands trembled when he worked. He had trouble with long calculations. He could still fly short distances, but the Reach was not a short distance. He knew, by then, that he was not going to make it back himself. Rin paused. He looked at Aura and Belt. Aura's expression had changed. Belt was looking at the wall. Rin said, "He recorded a log before he died. It's in the file. Do you want to hear it?" Belt said nothing. Aura said yes. Rin played it. The voice was rougher than you might expect from someone in their 50s. Illness had taken some of the steadiness out of it, but the words were clear. Dale said he was sorry for the delay. He said he was sorry for a lot of things, but mostly for the delay. He said he did not know if she was still there, but that if she was, she deserved to know he had never stopped trying. He said the compact's bureaucracy was a wall he had spent 17 years throwing himself at, and he was running out of time to throw. He said he had made an arrangement. He had asked the Human Transit Authority to ensure that any human vessel passing through the reopened reach would be briefed on the situation, with a request to make contact on his behalf. He said he knew it was not the same as coming himself. He said he was aware of that. Then he said something that made the cabin very quiet. He said, "She told me once that the remembrance is kept by the whole self, not just the body. I'm sending my whole self. It just has to travel in pieces." He died 4 months after recording it. Rin turned off the audio. After a moment, Belt stood up. He did not say anything dramatic. He just went to the pilot console and adjusted the ship's position, bringing them in closer to the station hull, within easy EVA range. Nobody asked him to. He said, without turning around, "Suit up, Rin. Bay door will be open when you're ready. Space is very quiet when you step out into it." Rin had done EVAs before, safety checks, external repairs, the occasional retrieval, and every time, without fail, the silence was the first thing. Inside a ship, there was always sound, even when it was small. The breath of the ventilation system, the low hum of the drive, the shift of metal cooling or warming. Outside there was nothing, just the suit's own workings and the sound of your own breathing, and beyond that, the full weight of everything. He moved across the hull with care. The tether connecting him to the Saren's Hope ran out behind him as he went, and the station grew larger as he crossed the distance. Battered and dark, a machine that had outlived its purpose and just kept existing anyway. He found Sarah exactly where the chart said she would be. She was curled in a shallow depression in the metal, wings folded along her back, tail wrapped once around her body. Her golden scales had faded slightly at the edges, not dramatically, but the way gold fades when it's been in the cold too long. Her eyes were open. They had been opened before he got close enough to see them. She was watching him come. He stopped about 2 meters away and crouched, so he was closer to her level. The suit's external speaker would carry his voice if he activated it. He did. "My name is Rin," he said. "I'm human. I'm a medic on a patrol vessel. I know about Dale," he said. "I have his file. I know what he tried to do, and I know what happened to him. I was given a brief when I joined this crew, asking that any human in the Reach make contact with you." He paused. "I should have come sooner. I'm sorry I didn't." Still she waited. Her eyes had not moved from his face. Even through a visor, he felt the quality of that attention, the kind that didn't miss anything. He told her everything. He told it in order, clearly, without softening it or rushing through the hard parts. He told her about the transit closure and the petitions. He told her about the failed attempts to run the corridor. He told her about the neurological diagnosis and the years of escalating desperation. He told her about the Human Transit Authority bulletin and the archivist who finally made the connection. He told her about the log Dale had recorded before he died and what Dale had said in it. He told her Dale was gone. He told her Dale had known she was still waiting. The Transit Authority had confirmed it in year 15 and told him. He had known. When Rin finished, he stopped talking. He stayed where he was, crouched on the hull of a dead station in the middle of nowhere, and waited. Sarah was very still for a long time. Long enough that Rin began to count his own heartbeats. He got to 41 before she moved. She lifted her head slightly. She looked at him, not the way she had been looking at him before, measuring and careful. Something different now. Older. She said, "I knew something had stopped him." Her voice through the calm was small and precise. "I did not know what. I did not know he had died. But I knew the shape of him, from when we traveled together. He was not a man who would forget." A pause. When someone shows you who they are in a small moment, fixing a panel they had no reason to fix, staying when they had no reason to stay, you know that person. "I knew him." She looked past Rin for a moment, toward the open dark. "I told the Solhari elders, when they came to bring me home, that I was not suffering. That was true. I was holding the remembrance. It is not a sad thing, to hold a remembrance. It is a purposeful thing. There is a difference." She looked back at Rin. "But I am glad you came." He nodded inside his helmet. He wasn't sure she could see it, but she probably could. Solhari had good eyes. "He said something in his log," Rin said, "about the remembrance being kept by the whole self, not just the body." He said he was sending his whole self in pieces. He stopped. I don't know if that counts, by your standards. I'm not a Solhari. I can't tell you what it means for your tradition. It counts, Sarah said. She said it simply and immediately, with no hesitation. He came back through you. That is what the remembrance requires, not the body, not the exact method. The intention fulfilled. The return completed. Her voice was steady. The remembrance is kept. Rin felt something loosen in his chest that he hadn't been aware of holding tight. He said, "What will you do now?" She thought about it. I do not know. I have not thought past this moment in 19 years. It is strange to have to think forward again. She looked at her own wings, as if noticing them. I think I would like to be warm. He reached out, slowly, giving her every chance to move away, and held out his gloved hand, palm up. She considered it for a moment. Then she stepped onto it, all 4 small feet, and folded herself carefully against the front of his suit. She weighed almost nothing. She was cold through the gloves. I've got her, Rin said over the ship comm coming back. Beld's voice came back flat and immediate. Bay doors open. They crossed the distance together, the medic and the small gold dragon, back toward the warm lights of the ship. Warmth arrived in stages. The first was the bay, pressurized, lit, still industrial and utilitarian, but enclosed. No vacuum. No open dark pressing at every surface. Sarah stepped off Rin's glove when he set her on the bay floor, and she stood there while he desuited and felt the air on her scales and did not say anything about it. But her wings extended slightly, just a few centimeters, as if testing the space. The second was the common room. Ara had found a thermal blanket in the emergency locker and left it folded on the table without comment. Rin carried Sarah through and set her near it. She examined it, then pulled it around herself with the careful precision she seemed to apply to every physical action, until only her head was showing. She looked very small. She looked like something that should not have survived 19 years on an open hull in a dead stretch of space. She also looked entirely undamaged. Rin synthesized a nutrition pack from the medical supply, the warmest one, high-fat content, designed for cold exposure recovery. He set it in front of her. She ate slowly and methodically, and between bites, she looked at everything in the room with those copper eyes, cataloging it. Beld came in from the pilot's cabin. He poured himself a cup of whatever the machine made when you pressed the button marked not coffee, and he sat down across from Sarah and looked at her. She looked back at him. I have flown past this station a great many times, he said. He did not apologize for it. He said it the way you say a fact you are not proud of, but will not dress up as anything other than what it is. Sarah regarded him. I know. I recognized your engine signature. You passed 4 times that I counted. Beld nodded once. I logged you every time. Never stopped. You were not the one I was waiting for, she said. I did not expect you to stop. He looked at her for another moment. Then he drank from his cup and said nothing more, and somehow that was the end of it. Not forgiven exactly, but settled. Beld was a man who could live with settled. Ara, who had been standing in the doorway, came in and sat down. She had the look of someone who had been rearranging her understanding of something and had not quite finished. I have a question, she said to Sarah. If you will permit it. Sarah turned to her. Yes. Why did you trust him? Ara asked. Humans were new. They had barely been in the wider galaxy for 2 decades when you met him. No long history to judge them by. No established reputation for keeping their word. Why did a cargo runner's promise carry enough weight to hold you in place for 19 years? The question was serious, and Sarah took it seriously. She was quiet for a moment, not because she didn't have an answer, but because she was choosing how to give it. Most species, she said slowly, make promises when they are confident, when they have calculated that the thing they are promising is achievable, probable, or safe. The promise is a report of what they have already determined. She looked at Ara. Humans make promises differently. I saw it in Dale, and I have seen it since, in records, in observation, and now today in Rin. Humans promise when they are not confident, when they do not know if they can do the thing. They promise because they believe the act of promising will help them find a way. The promise is not a report. It is a decision. She paused. That is either a very foolish way to live or a very brave one. I have had 19 years to think about it, and I believe it is both. I believe those 2 things are not opposites for your species. I believe that is actually the point of you. Rin, leaning against the wall with his arms folded, made a small sound that was not quite a laugh. Ara looked like she was going to say something, and then did not. After a while, Beld got up and went back to the pilot cabin without announcing it, and a few minutes later the ship began to move, pulling away from the station. From the viewport in the common room, Sarah watched it go, that long dark structure where she had spent so many years, getting smaller as the distance grew, until it was just a shape, and then just a point, and then nothing. She watched until there was nothing to watch. Then she turned forward. Rin said, "Our next stop is a refueling station called Hevron Post. 3 hours out. From there we can arrange passage to wherever you want to go." Sarah considered the name. "I have never been to Hevron Post." "Most people haven't," he said. "It's not interesting." "I have been in the same spot for 19 years, she said. "I suspect I will find it very interesting." She settled deeper into her thermal blanket. The ship hummed around her. There was warmth and light and people nearby, and ahead, in 3 hours, and then beyond that however many more hours and stops and unknown distances, somewhere to actually go. 1 year later, a small edition appeared at the bottom of the Human Transit Authority's standing cultural brief for reach-adjacent routes. It was filed jointly. It read, "Note to all personnel. The Solhari do not make casual promises, and they recognize when you do not either. They will believe you completely when you mean what you say. Given recent events in the Varen Reach, this office wishes to clarify that this is not a warning. It is a privilege.